In September 2018, when the new school year began at our middle school, Brightwood, I, Lily Campbell, was filled with the usual excitement and anticipation. It was the first day of fall, and although I always loved the start of the school year, but this time, things did not go as planned. Brightwood School was located in a picturesque spot on the edge of town, surrounded by lush parks and forests. The school grounds were extensive, with numerous flower beds and neatly trimmed lawns that always attracted attention. The grounds were maintained by a gardener, Mr. Thompson, who was well known for being a kind and diligent person. On that particular morning, I noticed that it was unusually quiet outside. The usual noise from children and the typical hustle and bustle seemed somehow muted. As I walked to class, I saw Mr. Thompson working in the flower bed near the main entrance, as usual. I waved to him and continued on my way. The first lesson went as expected, but halfway through the second period, when we, the students, were starting to settle into the school routine, we were suddenly interrupted. Principal Green entered the classroom with a worried expression on his face. He told us that we needed to immediately return to our classrooms and close all windows and doors. We were confused, and many of us began whispering, wondering what was going on. Later, we learned that a bear had wandered into the schoolyard. This was extremely unusual, as bears rarely enter such densely populated areas. Mr. Green explained that there had been an accident. Mr. Thompson, our gardener, who had tried to protect the school grounds, was found dead. Shock and fear enveloped us as we learned the details of what had happened. The bear appeared to be aggressive and behaved erratically. It had come out of the woods and was likely scared or injured. Mr. Thompson had tried to drive it away, but the bear was too strong and aggressive. The accident happened very quickly. Mr. Thompson, unable to defend himself, fell victim to the beast. After the incident, we spent the rest of the day at school under the watchful eye of police and park rangers. We had to stay in our classrooms, while the authorities ensured that the area was safe. Our lessons were cancelled, and the school day ended early. Almost everyone talked about the tragedy and how it affected our sense of safety. The next day, many students and their parents expressed their condolences to Mr. Thompson's family. The school organized a fundraiser in his memory, and many of us participated despite our own shock. This event left a deep mark on our consciousness. We often thought about how fragile our safety can be and how quickly things can change. The school grounds, which once seemed so familiar and safe, now served as a reminder of the tragedy that occurred at the start of the school year. That September day became a lesson for us about the unpredictability of life and the importance of respecting the surrounding nature. We learned to appreciate everyone who works for our benefit, and remembered Mr. Thompson as a person who gave his life for the safety of our school. In September 2010, I, Caitlin Brown, walked into a new school for the first time after moving with my parents to a different city. Lakeview Middle School was an old building with brick walls and a large courtyard surrounded by trees. The start of the school year was always stressful, but this time everything seemed particularly tense. The first day is always full of nerves and anticipation. We, the newcomers, were just starting to get to know our class and teachers. My classroom was a building constructed in the 1960s, and it had its own, slightly dusty but cozy character. In the evening, after the first day, we were assigned a project to organize a school project based on the history of our new institution. Lakeview's building was unusually large, and its basement stored archives and old items. Right away, during history class, Mr. Miller mentioned that the basement held documents and books we could use for our project. He also mentioned that the basement had not always been accessible to students and warned us to be cautious because it was quite old. When my friends James and Emily and I went to the basement, we were told we could use any information from the archives. The basement was dark and musty, with unlit corners and damp walls. We turned on our flashlights and began searching for the documents we needed. After a while, James noticed that the part of the ceiling in the basement was covered with cracks, and one of the old wooden shelves looked unstable. We carefully started sorting through stacks of documents to find something interesting for our project. Suddenly, there was a cracking sound, and, in an instant, an entire row of shelves, holding heavy books and folders, began to topple. Emily, who was standing nearby, screamed in panic as one of the shelves collapsed directly on her. James and I rushed to help, but it was too late. The shelves had fallen and Emily was trapped under the debris. At that moment, time seemed to slow down. I remember feeling the ground give way beneath me, and my heart was pounding so fast. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Fortunately, we managed to free Emily, but she was seriously injured. Teachers and medics arrived immediately. Everyone was in shock from what had happened. Emily had to be rushed to the hospital, and during that time, I prayed that she wouldn't be too badly hurt. Unfortunately, Emily sustained severe injuries, including broken bones and bruises. Spending several weeks in the hospital, she slowly recovered, but her life was never the same. This event changed our school and all of us. Soon after the incident, the basement was closed to the students and underwent repairs. Warning signs were posted on the walls, and access to the archives was strictly limited. Since then, this incident has been a constant reminder of how quickly things can change. Every time I pass by those places in the school, I remember that day and the agonizing feeling when we tried to save Emily. This tragedy left a deep mark on our school community and my life. When the new school year began at our middle school, Garden View, I, Sophie Bennett, was once again looking forward to new adventures and, of course, catching up with friends after summer break. The school was familiar and cozy, but this year will bring us an unexpected and frightening event. On the first day of the school, we met a new classmate, Mike. He was a year younger than us, but had transferred to our class for some unknown reason. Mike stood out among us. He always dressed in dark clothing and wore strange, old-fashioned jewelry, metal amulets, and rings with mysterious symbols. He appeared shy, but at the same time unusually self-assured. At first, we didn't think much of it. Mike quickly blended into the class, but his odd behavior caught our attention. He often talked about strange rituals and mystical practices that seemed unrelated to the school curriculum. Sometimes, when we discussed weekend plans, Mike would suddenly start talking about ancient rites and secret societies, which left us feeling uneasy and even unsettled. One autumn evening, after classes, Mike invited me and a few friends to a special meeting. He said it would be an important gathering where we will learn about something great. We were curious and a bit apprehensive, but decided to go, not thinking much of it. We arrived at an old, abandoned building at the end of the street that Mike had chosen for the meeting. Inside, the building was dark and dusty, and we immediately noticed strange symbols painted on the walls. Mike was dressed in a ritualistic robe, and everything looked very unusual. He told us that it would be an initiation, but before we could understand what was happening, he began chanting incomprehensible spells. My fear escalated, and I noticed that my friends were starting to panic as well. Suddenly, Mike locked the door and said we had to go through an ordeal. At that moment, I realized I was in something horrifying. I felt sweat on my palms, and my heart was pounding. We began to notice that there were others in the building beside us. At first, there were rustling and strange sounds, but soon it became clear that there were other people there. We tried to find a way out, but the doors were locked, and Mike stood in front of them, blocking our way. In a panic, we started looking for any means of escape and eventually found one of the broken windows through which we managed to get out. We fled from that sinister place, but the horrors we experienced stayed with us for a long time. Later, we learned that Mike was a member of a local cult that used the old building as their sanctuary. His parents, who had been trying to keep his activities a secret, were arrested after we reported the incident to the authorities. Mike himself disappeared and remains missing to this day. This experience left a deep impression on us. We became more cautious in choosing friends and started paying more attention to the behavior of those around us. The beginning of the school year at the Garden View became not only a time for new beginnings, but also a lesson in the importance of being aware of what is happening around us